Hello, welcome to Raw and Real Beyond the Mask. Imagine discovering you've become a father, but 5 days after the child has been born. Not because you weren't ready, not because you didn't want to be there, but because someone else made that decision for you. Today we're talking about what it's like when a father is deliberately shut out of a child's life and how that kind of loss can break a man. I'm joined today by John Smith Farmer, a man who knows his pain all too well. His ex kept his son from him, using excuses, roadblocks and manipulation. What should have been the happiest moment of his life, becoming a dad, turned into one of the darkest moments of his life. That pain led him to his first breakdown and forced him to wear a mask just to get through each day. Today he's here to share his story. Hello and welcome to Beyond the Mask. I'm your host, Big Dave. Join me for a journey of self-discovery, growth and connection. And we will take off the mask that we've all been wearing too long. All right, John, you said you've told me your story is about your ex basically alienating you from your son.
Yeah.
Can you take us back to the moment you found out you were a father? What happened and what was on your mind?
Well, we were both very young. We'd known each other for a long time, but we'd got into a relationship about a year before, and then we got married. When we found out she was pregnant, I was excited, but nervous as well. I was very young, 21, and just imagine what you'd imagine a young man to feel: excited, scared, worried, all those kinds of emotions.
Yeah, planning for the future.
Worried for the future, yeah. There wasn't a lot of jobs in the town where I grew up.
So did you have any idea what was happening? That it was good, like he was going to break up, or what led up to that?
So, I worked as a spot welder and we lived in a caravan on a traveller's site. We had one door key, and I would go off to work in the morning, and she would do whatever during the day, and I would come home. When she got pregnant, we didn't have a car or anything like that, so she wanted to be at a mum's house because she said she didn't feel safe being pregnant and being alone, and it was a good 45-minute walk to where her mum lived. So, I thought, well, that's okay. I understand the concerns where that's all coming from. But as the weeks went on, it was oh, can you not come tonight? I've not had a very good day. I've had a lot of morning sickness. I'm not very well. And I was thinking, okay, fair enough, let her rest.
Yeah.
But then this happened more and more frequently.
So she started making excuses not to see you, basically.
And then it was, instead of the odd day where she said, don't come round because I'm not feeling too good, it was every so often that I could actually spend some time with her.
Yeah.
And this led to a lot of frustration, and on my part and on her part, as I was, getting frustrated with it. I decided, no, we're gonna sit down and have a conversation about this, and it led to an argument, and the mother got involved and the sister got involved, and then it just snowballed into a huge kind of, I don't know how to describe it, a huge row for want of a better word.
Yeah.
And then she wanted to spend some time apart, and then after a few weeks it was like, what is going on here? You're my wife. And she just blurted out in the street one day. She was with her mother and her sister, and she just blurted out in the street, I want a divorce.
So how did that make you feel?
Angry, obviously devastated. I was panicked that, you know, I want to be able to see my son. I'd spent weeks and weeks not fantasizing, but imagining what it's going to be like to be a dad.
Yeah,
you know, taking my son to the park, because we knew I was having a boy. We was having a boy. Taking my son to the park. What we was going to call him. You know, the clothes we were going to buy for him. You know. So there was a lot of anger, a lot of fear, a lot of worry about, you know, what happens when the baby's born, you know. And afterwards, when things were settling down between us, I would carry on living my life, and I didn't know anything about what was happening.
You were separated by then, yeah?
Yeah, we were separated, so I didn't know how her health was.
Yeah.
You know, I know we were separated, but she was carrying my child, so obviously her health and safety was of a concern as well.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going on. I was completely in the dark about anything.
So if you reached out, they didn't tell you anything?
No, they wouldn't answer the door.
Alienated you, innit?
Yeah, wouldn't answer the door. Mobile phones weren't a thing back then, so it wasn't
different
like
generation.
I could text.
Yeah.
So
how did you deal with that? Eh? What mask did you put on? And we go back to when he was born.
So when you want to go back to when he was born?
Well, when you first had the breakup, and then were you going through all that first before he was born? You obviously started wearing the emotional mask.
Well, my father was criticised me. She went round the town telling lies about me. She told me that I used to lock her in the house, lock her in the caravan while I was at work. I wouldn't buy food that she liked to eat or drink.
Quite narcissistic then.
Yeah, she said I used to hit her, and I've never raised a hand to anybody.
No. And again, back then, they still believe the mums, but there's more. The stories can be told more now. Back then, there was no evidence and trails, because with media and social media, if you put what happened and they say something, you can say about it then, can't you?
Yeah.
But so that, and like I said, I think, so all right. So leading up to your son being born.
So, as time went on, I became. I programmed myself with my suit of armor, and I would cut people out, and I become accustomed to my friends that distance themselves from me, and I start to feel very bitter, very isolated, very bitter. I spent a lot of time with my mum, because my mum and I were always close. I spent a lot of time with my mum and a lot of time by myself. And I was into mountain biking at the time, so I would do a lot of mountain biking by myself.
Keeping yourself.
And that helped me. On the bike, I was free, and everything else just would fade away.
That's good.
So I was lucky to have that outlet. And then I remember the day. I can remember it, every detail. It was a Thursday morning, and I would go into town with my mum. We would have a coffee and a bacon sandwich in our favourite cafe. And I was on my way out with my mum, and one of the neighbours come running out of a bungalow and says, "What's he like? What's he like?" All excited and happy. And I was, "What are you talking about?" She says, "What's he like? What's he like, the baby?" He'd been born.
Should realise that
on the Sunday evening,
and it was Thursday,
and it was the Thursday morning. No,
so she didn't even have, or her family didn't even have the audacity to let you know, because it's on your phone call there. We didn't have social media then, but it could have been someone just knocking on the door just to let you know the baby has been born, it's safe, it's this weight, this is what we call him. Nothing.
What was even worse about it was every time I reached out to them, they wouldn't answer the door, or her sister would answer the door and be abusive and and confrontational, and I would walk away. You know, I would. Is the baby here yet? Okay, I'm not doing this, and I would walk away. Which they used against me. I kept walking away.
But if we had been there and kept on, you could have got arrested, which was not good. Not a good point anyway, is it?
She lived in a street, and if you come out of her back gate is literally a minute's walk up the road to my parents' bungalow. So that just reinforced my armour then. If anyone went against me, if they challenged my justification for the way I was behaving, if they challenged that, they were cut out of my life. So I did find myself with the people I did interact with getting smaller and smaller. My whole world got smaller.
Yeah. That causes loneliness then. When you've got
Very much so.
And loneliness is a bad one. That'd be for another time to talk about that,
And depression as well.
So what after the birth and all then, because you said it reinforced your armour.
Yeah.
But then how did you feel? Because you told me that it got you to breaking point, didn't it?
Yes. So I went straight away to see Stephen, my son. His mum let me in, and there was only her there, so it was a little bit easier.
She didn't have her.
A little bit easier.
She didn't have someone backing her up.
It was just me and her instead of me against her and her, because that's where it would turn into me against the three of them when it's all about the baby.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was in awe. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in the world. And I held him, but he started crying. So I panicked. And you got to remember, I was a very young man. I was 21.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to process this. I didn't know how to deal with a baby.
And you're already going through a lot of emotional crap.
I was terrified I'd done something wrong. So he says, oh, here. And I gave him back. And she used that against me. She said he held him once and for a minute and then gave him straight back. So that was kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It was like angry, upset, offended. Well, it was outrageous. You know, nobody, in fact, I did say nobody has a baby for the first time when they're young and knows exactly how to deal with that child. It's a learning process. But no, it was, I knew exactly what to do.
You should, to them, it's like you should have known better.
Yeah, I should have known better. Yeah.
Rather than let them, because if he'd been crying for longer, she would probably use that against you as well, saying, "Oh, you really couldn't comfort him." It's a newborn baby.
Yeah. Looking back at the time, I may not have been very supportive myself if roles were reversed, but looking back, I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but no, it's okay, just settle him, it's fine, all babies cry, a little bit of reassurance. It was like an opportunity to gain more ammunition against me, which was to come, and I didn't know what was to come, but I found out very quickly what was to come.
So what did they
contact was very difficult. Every time I came to visit, one of the first things she would do is tell Dave this and tell Claire that, and it was like, no, I'm sorry, I've come to see Steve, and I haven't come to have an argument about what my friends may or may not have done. If you've got a problem with you need to take that up with them. I'm here to see Stephen, not this. So that was very much the flavour of how things went during every. So she also said I could only come at specific times, which I understand for a baby. A routine, the baby very much dictates the routine.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had kids since. You've got children, you know very much the routine.
Yeah, exactly.
But she told me I could only come after he'd been fed at tea time. Bearing in mind, I was at college full time, and at this point, I was involved in another relationship. So there were other things in my life that I needed to juggle around to make time to see Stephen, which I happily did and looked forward to seeing him. But there was always a dread, an anticipation of a confrontation, the unpleasant atmosphere. And for the first 3 months of his life, I only saw the top of his head from under a blanket, because she'd fed him and was cradling him and he was sleeping, but I could only come at those times. So for me to see him awake and to interact with him, I didn't get any of that.
No.
She wouldn't let him out of her arms.
So just, another weapon.
Yeah, for the first 3 months.
Yeah.
We went to court 3 times. And on the third time, the solicitor said that there are 2 things that can happen. They will order her to go to give you access, which they did 3 separate times.
Yeah.
She was court ordered to give me contact, and the third time was in a contact centre.
It's like a mediation type place.
At my request.
Yeah.
Just me, her and the baby in a room together.
Yeah.
It
But then it's
made no difference.
didn't it?
No, made no
Because in
difference.
something like that, there's people who are not involved, and it's a safe place for everybody.
Yeah.
But she didn't want to know, or did she turn up?
She turned up once, and to be fair, it was winter time.
Yeah.
But she stipulated the times. It was from like 4 o'clock onwards. That was the only time. So due to the inclement nature of the weather and the time of year, she said she couldn't take him across town.
Yeah.
So that she couldn't attend. And the solicitor...
She's doing that. It's a way of keeping the power.
Yeah.
It's like she's always got the weapon, like always got the ammunition. Choosing the times and the where to and all.
Very much so.
She knows that she's got the one head. You'll do it. She knows you're just going to go out your way to go there. If she says the other side of the country, you'd have gone there.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be an excuse,
Yeah.
and that is, that's unfortunately the logos on their side. Then, oh, sorry, for the well-being of the baby.
Well, going back a little bit to the solicitor, the other thing was that under the circumstances, the solicitor said that they would order contact, which they did.
Yeah.
If she continued to not answer the door, not turn up to the contact centre, not reply to letters, not reply to house phone calls, that they would hold her in contempt of court, and then they could either fine her, which they're not. The solicitor said they're not going to do to a single mother on benefits, or they could send her to prison, which they're not going to do to a single mother with a newborn child.
Yeah.
So I asked the question, well, where does that leave me? And he says, unfortunately, there's nothing you can do. You can keep going to court, but it's going to go the same way.
Every time, yeah.
Every time, yeah. And they're not going to send her to prison, and they're not going to fine her. So basically, the top and bottom of it is, at the time, the system was very much set up against the man in the mum's favour.
Yeah.
And when you're faced with that at such a young age, with no support from family, no support from friends, I made the very, very difficult decision to stop fighting for him. It was something I thought about for a long time. It was a good 3 or 4 weeks. I sat and I thought of nothing else, and I was at breaking point. And I said, for my own sanity, I need to stop and take a step back. And I justified it to myself by saying, every time, from the baby's perspective, a strange person comes in the house and mum gets upset. And I was terrified that he was going to, as he got older and more aware, he was going to associate me turning up with his mum getting upset. And that's not the relationship, the bond I wanted to form with him.
No.
So I took a step back and I stopped. I stopped going to the solicitor. In fact, I told the solicitor to say that I wouldn't be pursuing contact. And I left it at that. But what I wasn't prepared for was how that affected me afterwards. I dropped out of college. My relationship with my partner broke down quite messily. I ended up homeless. I slept in a field for 2 nights. On the 3rd night, it was raining so badly that I went to the local police station and I begged them, can I stay here for the night? And they let me sleep in an interview room on the floor. My dad, he said he couldn't cope with the upset of it.
Yeah.
So he says, you can't stay here. None of my friends were available. They were somehow not in, busy. My sister said, you can't stay here.
You couldn't turn to no one.
Nobody.
That's
I
right.
dealt with it by myself. Just me. Slept in a field for 2 nights and a police station for 1 night. I wasn't arrested or anything. They just said, yes, but if we need the interview room, you'll have to leave.
Yeah, you need a shelter.
Yeah, she literally was somewhere to keep the rain off me for the night.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. I remember going to my local. It was like a play area stroke Sunday league football pitch. I remember getting a Stanley knife. I went to my dad's, had a cup of tea. I stole a Stanley knife from my dad's toolbox and I sat down against a goalpost. I meant it.
Yeah.
And when the blood came out, it was hot. I was surprised at how hot it was. But as it bled, I felt all the stress that I'd gone through the relationship breaking down, having no support, struggling to see my son, carrying the guilt and the shame of stopping the fight for contact, then becoming homeless, losing everything I had, and the sheer, why is no one helping me? I couldn't cope with it anymore.
So when you've done it, it was like a valve and releasing all the steam.
Yeah.
But then because you had come to a point of no return, you felt like it could have been, well, finally I can let go. That's what you felt like, and I guess it could have been that, like where it's released. It's like, well, no, now it's over in your head.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're.
Yeah, it was like the stress just left me, and I properly relaxed, and I thought, this is it. And I just let my head lean back, and then nothing happened. And I looked at my wrist; it had stopped bleeding. It was a wide open gash about 1 inch on my wrist. It looked like a scene from a zombie film.
Yeah.
It literally did. And it just stopped bleeding. And then all the stress came back.
Yeah.
All the pressure, everything
just-
felt like it was coming down on me.
So you're like,
Well, there was no way out now. I had to face this.
yeah.
I couldn't block it out anymore. I had a big gash in my wrist that I had to go to hospital.
Yeah.
So I went back to my mum and dad's. My dad reacted in a way I'd never ever seen him react before. He picked up a tea towel. Well, he had a tea towel in his hand and he just threw it into the corner of the room. And my dad wasn't a violent man. And that was the first time I'd seen him. One of the first times I'd seen him react in a violent way. And my mum, the colour just drained out of her. And I got myself stitched up. And the nurse stitched me up. The anaesthetic just bled out, so every single stitch I felt. And even that, in my mind, was like, Jesus, how much more crap even can I take? Even the anaesthetic isn't working for me.
Yeah.
So I'd been driven to the point of wanting to end it, and I couldn't even get patched up without any relief from pain.
Yeah. Just felt broken.
Broken.
Completely
Yeah.
broken. Yeah.
Broken. So in the years following that, I did pick up. I moved out of the town to Hull. Just focused on living my life. I would keep people at bay. The few friends I did have, I kept them at arm's length. I was openly nasty to people if I felt that they were getting too close to me. And for about a good 10 years, I lived by myself, doing what I wanted. I didn't celebrate my birthday. I didn't celebrate Christmas because I didn't feel like I had a right to, because I'd turned my back on my son.
Yeah. So
Every
you feel like you was to blame, even though I want you.
Every year on his birthday, I would do something. Even if it was just go out to ride a bike. Hull isn't far from the East Coast, so I would ride my bike to the coast, and I would sit on the beach and think about him. You know, imagine what his birthday parties might have been like, what his first day at school was like.
Yeah.
Because none of that information was given to me. She disappeared. I knew where her mum lived, but they wouldn't answer the door. And if they did ever answer the door, it was very unpleasant. So in the end, I didn't knock anymore. I didn't put letters through. I blocked it out, and on his birthday and Christmas and Father's Day were the 3 times a year that it would hit me hardest. Very difficult time.
Yeah.
And that armour just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And I would just be openly, if people got too close, I would just shut them down. I would be obnoxious and rude to be disliked, so that no one could ever get closer to me to hurt me again.
Because you was afraid of the same thing happening again.
Yeah.
Being now married.
Yes. Yes.
See?
So
It took a while for the storm to pass, that's what it is, isn't it?
it is. And you know what? People will judge you.
Yeah.
They will judge you, and they will say things, and some of it might hit a nerve. But you know what? Nobody has been in your situation. Nobody has been stopped from seeing a child.
Right, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know
nobody has been stopped. Well, nobody has been stopped from being a child like you have.
Yeah, exactly. You got your own story in it. Because someone might say, like you said, they might judge you. They might say, "Oh, well, you should have kept fighting." But then what? How far does it get? And how far do you keep fighting? And
I thought,
could it have been really straight, like you said? You was worried about your son, like, and if it had been like you 6, 7, and every couple of weeks meeting, and it was a horrible situation,
yeah,
he'd
yeah,
resent you and hate you anyway. Like that's how it would
yeah,
have gone. Like, because they would have been drumming it into him to hate you,
yeah.
and sometimes it's
So
not fair on your son.
yeah, so
The listeners, 3 tips that worked for you to get you through it.
you need a constructive outlet for all that negative emotion.
So you
For
said
me,
biking one
it
there.
was mountain biking. Yeah. It let me. It was like. It was like leaving all the pressure and stress and emotion behind. When I was in the saddle, it was like I was free. Eventually, I would have to face it again, but for that little bit of time, it's a reprieve and it
Yeah.
eases the pressure.
You also mentioned about writing a diary. How did
Yeah.
that help?
In a situation where you have to be so guarded, where any emotional outburst can and is used against you, writing things down in a diary or on a computer screen, just getting those words out and down on some sort of medium can also relieve the stress, because
Yeah.
you're free to run. If you have to scribble words in black marker as hard as you can on an A3 sheet, it releases that emotional pressure and you're not carrying it around. You've got to keep telling yourself, in my situation, any advice I would give to any father or any parent battling to see a child is do things and document them, because eventually that child is going to ask, why wasn't my mother, father there? Why didn't they want to know? And eventually it's hoped that the child will approach you, even if it's just to scream and say, why wasn't you there? Then you can then say, look, I thought about you every day. I tried to be in touch. This is what I did. These are all the cards. These are the letters I wrote to you. Even if you write a letter and don't post it, this is the letter I wrote to you.
Thanks for coming on, John. Thanks for
Thank
sharing
you.
your story. I know you've got many more to share, so maybe you'll share other ones with us another time. And
Yeah,
I shall see you soon.
it's been a pleasure, sir.